The crack sounded like a gunshot. Bang! The windshield exploded into a web of shattered glass. "What is she doing in your front seat?" Emily Carter's scream echoed through the quiet suburban street in Austin, Texas. Daniel Carter barely had time to react before another rock slammed into the glass. Crash! Tiny shards slid down the dashboard like falling ice. Porch lights flicked on across the neighborhood. Front doors opened. People stepped outside. "What's going on?" someone called from across the street. Inside the car, Rachel Bennett froze in the passenger seat. Her laptop bag slipped from her lap. I think I should leave," she whispered. Daniel rubbed his forehead slowly. "Just give me a second." Outside, Emily stood barefoot in the driveway, gripping another rock from the flower bed. Her chest rose and fell with anger. "You think I'm stupid?" she shouted. She pointed straight at Rachel. "You brought her here, to my house."
Now imagine this for a moment. You pull into your own driveway after a long day at work. Your coworker is sitting beside you because you are finishing a discussion about a project due tomorrow. Then suddenly your spouse storms outside and smashes your windshield in front of the entire neighborhood. If you were Daniel in that moment, would you defend yourself immediately? Or would you stay quiet and let everyone believe the worst? Because what Daniel did next was the beginning of a chain of events that would destroy his marriage. And the most shocking part, this night wasn't actually the beginning of the story. It was the breaking point.
Rachel slowly opened the passenger door. "I'm really sorry," she said nervously. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." Emily laughed bitterly. "Oh, you caused plenty of trouble." More neighbors gathered along the sidewalk. Someone lifted a phone and started recording. Daniel noticed
Emily,
immediately.
Stop, Daniel said firmly.
His jaw tightened. "Emily," he said quietly, "put the rock down." But she hurled it anyway. Bam! Another section of the windshield shattered. Rachel gasped. Small pieces of glass scattered across the dashboard. "Emily, stop," Daniel said firmly. Emily stepped closer to the car.
Emily,
Her eyes burned with fury.
put the rock down.
"You bring your girlfriend home and expect me to stay quiet?" Rachel shook her head quickly. "No, that's not what this is." Emily pointed at the passenger seat. "Then why were you sitting there?" Rachel hesitated. "We were reviewing a report for tomorrow's meeting." Emily turned toward the crowd. "Did you hear that?" She laughed loudly. "Office work." A few neighbors exchanged looks. Someone whispered, "That sounds suspicious." Daniel felt heat rise in his chest, but he forced it down. He had learned something over the years. Arguing with Emily in public only made things worse. Because this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. 3 years earlier, Emily had smashed a dinner plate during an argument. A year later, she threw Daniel's phone against the wall after seeing a female colleague's name in a text message. Every time, the fight followed the same pattern. Anger, accusations, then regret. But tonight, something felt different. Rachel grabbed her bag nervously. "I'll call an Uber," she said. Daniel nodded. "That's probably best." He walked to the driveway gate and opened it for her.
I'll call an Uber.
Rachel hurried toward the
That's
street
probably
without
best.
looking back. Her heart was racing. This wasn't just embarrassing. Her promotion interview was in 2 weeks, and someone was already filming. If that video spread online, her reputation could be destroyed. Emily clapped slowly as Rachel left.
Oh yes.
"Oh yes,"
Run away.
she said loudly. "Run away." Daniel closed the gate and turned back toward the driveway. Broken glass glittered under the streetlights. Emily crossed her arms. "You embarrassed me tonight." Daniel looked at the shattered windshield. "You smashed my car. You embarrassed me first. I gave someone a ride. She sat beside you." Daniel exhaled slowly. "Emily," but she stepped closer. "You think I'm blind?" The neighbors murmured again. Phones were still recording. Daniel suddenly felt exhausted. Without another word, he reached into the car and grabbed his briefcase. Then he walked toward the house. Emily followed him. "Don't walk away from me." Daniel stopped at the door. He turned slightly. His voice was calm. "We'll talk later." Then he went inside. Outside, the neighbours slowly drifted back to their homes. People whispered on their porches. "Looks like she caught him cheating." Men always get exposed eventually. Emily stood beside the shattered windshield. Her anger slowly faded. But something else crept in. Doubt. For a brief moment, she wondered if she had reacted too quickly. But the thought disappeared just as fast. Inside the house, Daniel placed his briefcase on the kitchen table. Through the window, he could still hear the neighbours talking. He looked at the broken windshield again. Glass everywhere. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He opened the camera and quietly took several photos. 1, 2, 3. Then he saved them. His face showed no anger, just quiet exhaustion. Daniel walked into the small study at the back of the house. He opened a drawer. Inside was a thin folder. Photos, dates, notes, evidence he had quietly collected over the years. Daniel stared at it for a moment. Then he added the new pictures of the smashed windshield. The folder closed with a soft thud. Because the truth was, Daniel hadn't started documenting things tonight. He had started months ago. Not because he wanted revenge, but because he had already begun wondering if the marriage was reaching its end. And the broken windshield was the moment he realized the answer. By the next morning, the story had already traveled through the entire neighborhood. And in that version of the story, Daniel Carter was the cheating husband who got caught. Emily made sure of it. It started early. Around 8 a.m., Emily stood in the driveway beside the shattered windshield, talking loudly to Mrs. Thompson, who lived across the street. "I trusted him," Emily said, shaking her head. "And he had the nerve to bring her right here." Mrs. Thompson gasped. "To your own house?" Emily nodded slowly. "Yes, sitting comfortably in the front seat, like she belonged there." Another neighbour walking her dog slowed down. "What happened?" Emily sighed dramatically. "I caught them." Within minutes, 3 people were standing in the driveway listening. And just like that, the story began spreading. By noon, half the street had heard it. By evening, the story had grown. How it sounded like this. Daniel had been seeing his coworker secretly for months, and Emily had finally caught them. Meanwhile, Daniel said nothing. Tss. That morning, Daniel stepped outside with a small broom and dustpan. The windshield was still cracked across the front of his car. Broken glass sparkled across the driveway. Emily stood nearby, scrolling through her phone. "You're not even going to apologize?" she asked coldly. Daniel swept the glass slowly. "You destroyed property." Emily scoffed. "Oh, please." She gestured toward the street. "Everyone knows why I did it." Daniel kept sweeping. "You embarrassed me." He said nothing. That silence irritated her. Emily stepped closer. "You're acting like the victim now." Daniel finished sweeping the last pile of glass and placed the broom against the garage wall. He finally spoke. "You already told everyone your story." Emily folded her arms. "Because it's the truth." Daniel looked at her quietly. Then he walked back inside. Emily frowned. His silence was strange. Usually people fought when they were accused. They argued. They defended themselves. But Daniel just walked away. To Emily, that silence meant only one thing. He was guilty. Across town, Rachel Bennett sat quietly at her desk. 2 co-workers stood beside her cubicle. "Rachel," one of them said carefully. "Are you okay?"
Are you
Rachel
okay?
forced a small smile.
I'm fine.
"I'm fine." The other co-worker lowered his voice. "Someone posted the video." Rachel's stomach dropped. "What video?" He turned his phone toward her. There it was. The clip from last night. Emily is screaming. The rock smashed the windshield. Neighbours shouting in the background. Rachel stepping out of the car. The caption read, "Wife catches cheating husband bringing mistress home." The post already had thousands of views. Rachel felt her chest tighten. "That's not what happened," she whispered. But the internet had already chosen its version of the truth, and that version spread faster than facts. Rachel leaned back in her chair. Her promotion interview was in 2 weeks. Now her name was tied to a viral cheating scandal. Her phone buzzed. A message from her manager. "Rachel, please come see me when you have a moment." Rachel closed her eyes briefly. One night, one misunderstanding, and suddenly her entire career felt uncertain. That evening, Daniel sat in his study at home. The thin evidence folder was open again. He reviewed the photos from the driveway. Then he added something else. A screenshot of the viral video. He placed it neatly in the folder. Footsteps
You've
approached.
been hiding in here all day?
Emily stood in the
I've been
doorway.
working.
You still haven't explained
"You've been
why she
hiding
was
in
sitting
here all
beside
day."
you.
Daniel closed the folder. "I've been working." Emily leaned against the doorframe. "You still haven't explained why she was sitting beside you." Daniel looked at her. "She's my coworker." Emily rolled her eyes. "Sure she is." Daniel said nothing. Emily studied him carefully. Something about him felt different. Too calm. Too quiet. "You're not even trying to fix this," she said. Daniel leaned back in his chair. "What would fixing it look like to you?" Emily hesitated. "Admitting the truth." Daniel shook his head slightly. "That's not the truth." Emily's voice sharpened. "You think people are stupid?" Daniel looked at her steadily. "I think people believe the first story they hear." Emily opened her mouth to respond, but Daniel spoke again. "And you made sure they heard yours first." Emily scoffed. "Well, maybe you should have told yours." Daniel stood up. "I will." Emily folded her arms. "Oh, really?" Daniel picked up the folder and placed it back inside the drawer. "Yes." Emily smirked. "And how do you plan to do that?"
You'll see.
Daniel walked past her
Daniel.
toward the hallway.
What?
You're not leaving
You'll
this
see.
marriage over one fight.
Emily turned around. "Daniel?" He stopped. "What?" "You're not leaving this marriage over one fight." Daniel didn't answer immediately. Finally, he said something that made her pause. "It wasn't one fight." Then he walked away. Emily stood in the doorway of the study. For a moment, a strange feeling crept into her chest. Something that almost felt like worry. But she quickly pushed it aside. Because in her mind, she had already won. The neighbours believed her. The internet believed her. And Daniel was too quiet to fight back. What Emily didn't realize was this. Daniel wasn't trying to win an argument. He was quietly preparing to end the war. Because early the next morning, Daniel had an appointment. Not with a friend. Not with his boss. But with someone who could legally change both of their lives. A divorce lawyer. And once that meeting happened, Emily's version of the story would slowly begin falling apart. The internet loves drama. But it loves new drama even more. And 2 days after the windshield incident, a second video appeared online. This one was longer, clearer, and impossible to ignore. The caption read, "Full security footage from across the street. Watch before judging." The video came from Chris Walker, the neighbor whose security camera pointed directly toward Daniel's driveway. The footage started calmly. Daniel's car is pulling in. Rachel was sitting beside him with a laptop open. Both of them are pointing at something on the screen. Talking. No touching. No flirting. No suspicious behavior. Then the front door of the house burst open. Emily stormed outside. Her voice was loud even without clear audio. Then, she grabbed a rock and smashed the windshield. The video ended with neighbors gathering around. Within hours, the internet began changing its mind. The comment section told the story. Wait, they were literally working. She attacked his car for no reason. This looks like jealousy, not cheating. The first video didn't show this part. The same pages that mocked Daniel 2 days earlier. We're now questioning Emily, but the damage had already spread far beyond the neighborhood. At the office, Rachel sat in a conference room across from her manager, Laura Grant. Laura had her laptop open. The viral video played on the screen. Rachel folded her hands nervously. I want to explain. Laura raised a hand gently. I already saw the full footage. Rachel blinked. You did? Laura nodded. The security camera video. Rachel exhaled slowly. So you know nothing inappropriate happened? Laura leaned back in her chair. I know it looks like you were discussing work. Rachel nodded quickly. We were reviewing the Henderson contract before the morning meeting. Laura studied her for a moment. Rachel, your promotion interview is next week. Rachel's stomach tightened. I know. Laura closed the laptop. Public perception matters. Rachel looked down briefly. I understand. Laura sighed. But the updated video changes the context. Rachel looked up. Laura smiled slightly. Just focus on your work. Rachel felt the tension in her chest loosen slightly, but she still knew something important. One moment in someone else's driveway had nearly cost her the biggest opportunity of her career. Back in the neighborhood, the atmosphere had changed. People were quieter, more cautious. Mrs. Thompson stood on her porch talking to another neighbor. I saw the new video, she admitted. The neighbor nodded. It didn't look like cheating. Mrs. Thompson sighed. Well, maybe Emily jumped to conclusions. Across the street, Chris checked his mailbox. Emily stormed out of the house toward him. Chris. He looked up calmly. What? You posted that video? Chris shrugged. It's my security footage. Emily crossed her arms. You made me look crazy. Chris raised an eyebrow. I didn't make you throw the rock. Emily opened her mouth. But no words came out. Chris continued. The internet already believed the first video. He gestured toward her phone. I just showed the full one. Emily's jaw tightened. But deep down, she knew arguing wouldn't help, because the footage showed exactly what happened. And for the first time since that night, Emily felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel before. Doubt. That evening, Daniel sat quietly in a small law office across town. Across from him sat Michael Harris, a divorce attorney. Michael flipped through the documents Daniel had brought. Photos, videos,
These photos are
notes.
key. I understand.
Then he leaned back. You've been documenting these incidents for a while. Daniel nodded. About 8 months. Michael tapped the photo of the shattered windshield. And this was the breaking point. Daniel hesitated. Then he said something unexpected. No. Michael looked up. What was? Daniel leaned back in the chair. The moment I realized we stopped trusting each other. Michael studied him for a moment. So you were already thinking about leaving? Daniel nodded slowly. I just didn't want the marriage to end this way. Michael closed the folder. Unfortunately, moments like that windshield incident tend to clarify things. Daniel said nothing. Michael continued. Based on what you've shown me, the divorce itself won't be difficult. Daniel asked quietly, because of the prenup. Michael shook his head. Partly. Then he added something important. But also because Texas law already recognizes your premarital property as separate. Daniel nodded. Michael leaned forward. But Emily's behavior could still influence how the court views the situation. Daniel looked at the folder. All I want is a clean separation. Michael smiled slightly. That's usually what people say. He closed the folder completely. Until emotions get involved. Back at the Carter house, Emily sat on the couch staring at her phone. The new video had spread everywhere. The comments were different now. Some are supportive. Some are skeptical. Some are harsh. Her phone buzzed. A message from her friend Lisa. Emily, the new video looks bad. Emily clenched the phone. Another message appeared. Were you sure he was cheating? Emily dropped the phone onto the couch. For the first time since the driveway incident, she felt something she hadn't expected. Regret. Just a small one. A quiet voice in her mind was asking a simple question. What if I overreacted? But the thought quickly disappeared when another memory surfaced. Her last relationship. Her ex-boyfriend. The lies. The betrayal. The humiliation. Emily closed her eyes. Not again, she whispered. Across town, Daniel walked out of the law office. The evening air was warm. He paused beside his car. For a moment he thought about the night in the driveway. The shouting. The glass. The crowd is watching. Then he remembered something else. Emily's face. Not angry, but scared. Daniel sighed quietly. He never wanted things to end this way. But sometimes, one moment reveals the truth about years of tension. And that truth was now moving towards something unavoidable. Because the next step had already been set in motion. And when Emily opens the envelope that arrives at the house tomorrow morning, she would finally realize something she hadn't considered. Daniel wasn't trying to win an argument. He was ending the marriage. Now let me ask you something. If you realized you might have made a mistake like Emily did, would you swallow your pride and apologize? Or would you keep defending yourself even when the truth begins to surface? The envelope arrived the next morning. Emily almost ignored it. She had barely slept the night before. The new video from Chris's security camera was everywhere now. The same neighbours who had nodded in agreement 2 days ago were suddenly avoiding eye contact. The whispers had changed, and Emily could feel it. She stood in the kitchen holding her coffee when she noticed the envelope on the counter. Plain. Official. Her name was printed across the front. Emily frowned and opened it. Inside were several legal documents. She read the first page slowly. Then again. Her chest tightened. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Emily's hands trembled. No. She flipped through the pages faster. Court filing. Attorney name. Property disclosure. Daniel Carter. Emily Carter. Divorce. Her first reaction wasn't anger. It was disbelief. Daniel would never actually do this. They fought before. Every couple fought. This was just another argument. Right? Emily grabbed her phone. She dialed Daniel. The phone rang twice before he answered. Hello? His voice sounded calm. Too calm. Daniel, Emily said quickly, I just opened the envelope. Yes. You actually filed for divorce? Yes. Emily walked slowly to the living room. This is ridiculous. Daniel didn't answer. You're ending our marriage over one stupid argument. It wasn't one argument. Emily ran a hand through her hair. Look, about the windshield. Daniel waited. For the first time since the night in the driveway, Emily felt something unfamiliar rising in her chest. Humility. Her voice softened. I shouldn't have done that. There was silence on the phone. I overreacted, she continued. I thought I was seeing the same thing that happened with my ex. Daniel's voice remained quiet. I know. Emily sat down slowly. I panicked. Another pause. Emily swallowed. I'm sorry. The words hung in the air. For a long moment, Daniel didn't respond. When he finally spoke, his tone wasn't angry. It was tired. I believe you. Emily felt a small flicker of relief. Then we can fix this. Daniel didn't answer immediately. Finally, he said something that made her stomach drop. I don't think we can. Emily stood up again. What do you mean? Emily, this didn't start with the windshield. You're exaggerating. No? His voice stayed calm. You threw my phone against the wall 2 years ago. Emily opened her mouth. You smashed dishes during an argument last year. Her chest tightened. And now you destroyed my car in front of the entire neighborhood. Emily's frustration returned. So you've been keeping score? No. Daniel paused. I've been keeping records. Emily froze. What? Daniel continued quietly. I installed security cameras in the driveway and living room 8 months ago. Emily felt the air leave her lungs. You did what? I started documenting things. Why would you do that? Daniel answered with painful honesty. Because I stopped feeling safe arguing with you. Emily sat back down slowly. For the first time, the weight of the situation truly hit her. You were planning to leave me. Daniel hesitated. Then he said something she didn't expect. I started preparing months ago. Emily whispered, so that night, the windshield. That wasn't the reason. It was the confirmation. Emily felt tears building behind her eyes. You should have told me things were this bad. Daniel's voice softened slightly. I tried. Emily thought back. The quiet conversations. The arguments that ended with Daniel walking away. The moments she dismissed as him being distant. Suddenly they looked different. And for the first time, Emily saw the situation from the other side. Her voice became small. Daniel? Yes. I really am sorry. Daniel didn't respond for a moment. When he spoke again, there was no anger, just resignation. I know. Emily wiped her eyes. Then please, don't end the marriage like this. Daniel looked out the window of the small apartment he had rented temporarily. I'm not ending it because of anger. Emily waited. I'm ending it because the trust disappeared a long time ago. Emily felt the words hit like a weight. Neither of them spoke. Finally, she asked the question she had been avoiding. What happens now? Daniel answered simply. The court process starts. Emily's voice trembled slightly. You're really doing this? Yes. The line went quiet again. Emily lowered the phone slowly. The apology she had finally found the courage to say had come too late. Across town, Daniel placed his phone on the kitchen counter. He leaned against the wall and closed his eyes briefly. Ending a marriage wasn't satisfying. It wasn't revenge. It was just the final step when two people could no longer trust each other. But the consequences of that moment in the driveway were still unfolding. Because while Emily had just realized the marriage was ending, something else was happening at the office. Rachel Bennett had just received a message from the company board, and it was about to change the entire situation again. Now think about this for a moment. Pride can delay an apology, but sometimes the longer we wait, the less power those words have. Emily finally admitted she was wrong. But by the time she said it, Daniel had already moved on emotionally. So here's the question. If someone truly apologizes after hurting you, should forgiveness mean giving them another chance? Or can forgiveness exist even when the relationship is over? The conference room on the 18th floor was quiet. Rachel Bennett sat at the end of the long table with a folder in front of her. Across from her were 3 members of the company's executive board. Her promotion interview had started 10 minutes earlier, but the conversation had taken an unexpected turn. One of the board members, Mr. Collins, tapped a tablet on the table. Rachel, he said carefully, before we continue, we need to address something. Rachel's stomach tightened. She already knew what it was. Mr. Collins turned the tablet around. On the screen was the viral video. The one with the smashed windshield. Rachel took a breath. Yes, she said quietly, I expected this might come up. Another board member, Sandra Lopez, leaned forward. The first video made it appear you were involved in an inappropriate relationship with a married colleague. Rachel nodded. I saw it. Sandra studied her. But a second video surfaced later. Rachel felt a small wave of relief. Yes. Sandra tapped the screen. The security camera footage from Chris's house began playing. The longer clip. Daniel and Rachel are reviewing a laptop, talking calmly. Then Emily rushed outside. The rock. The shattered windshield. When the video ended, the room was silent. Mr. Collins folded his hands. Can you explain what we're seeing? Rachel spoke clearly. That night we were reviewing the Henderson contract before the morning deadline. My car had broken down, so Daniel gave me a ride home after work. Sandra nodded slowly. And there was no personal relationship between you and Mr. Carter? Rachel shook her head. None. The board members exchanged a glance. Then Sandra smiled slightly. Thank you for clarifying. Rachel blinked. That's it. Mr. Collins leaned back in his chair. The second video provided important context. Rachel felt the tension leave her shoulders. Sandra closed her folder. Let's continue with the interview. For the first time in days, Rachel felt like her career might survive this. Later that afternoon, the company made an unexpected decision. The full security footage was quietly shared with their internal communications team. Within hours, the same social media pages that had spread the first viral clip began posting updates. New footage shows Coworker scandal was misunderstood. The full video reveals the argument was a domestic dispute. The narrative changed again. But this time, the truth traveled further than the rumors. Back in the neighborhood, Mrs. Thompson stood outside watering her plants when the update appeared on her phone. She adjusted her glasses and read the article. Oh dear, she murmured. Across the street, Chris stepped outside. What happened? He asked. Mrs. Thompson showed him the screen. They're saying the coworker was innocent the whole time. Chris shrugged. That's what the camera showed. Mrs. Thompson sighed. Well, I suppose we all jumped to conclusions. Chris didn't answer. Because the entire street had done exactly that. They believed the loudest story first. Inside the Carter house, Emily sat alone in the living room. The television was on, but she wasn't watching it. Her phone buzzed again. Another notification. Another message. But these weren't supportive messages anymore. Some were confused. Some were critical. Some simply asked questions. Emily, the new video makes it look different. Were you sure about what you saw? Emily placed the phone face down on the table. Her chest felt tight. The apology she gave Daniel earlier echoed in her mind. Too late. Everything had happened too fast. The anger. The shouting. The rock hitting the windshield. The crowd is watching. Now the whole internet had seen it. And they were forming their own opinions. Emily leaned back against the couch. For the first time since the incident, she felt completely alone. Across town, Daniel sat in a quiet cafe. Michael Harris, his lawyer, sat across from him reviewing a few documents. The divorce process should move fairly quickly, Michael said. Daniel nodded. Michael continued. Given the circumstances, the court will likely treat your premarital assets as separate property. Daniel looked out the cafe window. That's fine. Michael closed the folder. And the footage of the windshield incident may influence the court's view of marital conduct. Daniel said nothing. Michael studied him for a moment. You seem very calm about all of this. Daniel gave a small, tired smile. I stopped being angry a long time ago. Michael nodded slowly. That usually means someone has already emotionally moved on. Daniel stirred his coffee. Ending a marriage isn't something to celebrate. Michael stood up and gathered his papers. But sometimes it's necessary. Daniel nodded. Yes. Michael paused before leaving. One more thing. Daniel looked up. The public narrative has flipped in your favor. Daniel shrugged. That doesn't change what happened inside the marriage. Michael gave a small approving nod. Fair enough. Then he left. Daniel sat alone for a moment longer. Through the cafe window, the city moved normally. People walking. Cars passing. Life continues. The drama that had consumed his life for the past week was already fading for everyone else. But the final chapter of the situation was still ahead. Because in just a few days, the court would make the divorce official. And Emily would finally understand the full consequences of one moment of anger. Now let's pause for a moment and think about something important. When conflict explodes publicly, people rush to pick sides. But truth often arrives slower than accusations. And by the time it does, the damage is already done. Rachel's career nearly collapsed. Daniel's reputation was destroyed online for days. And Emily's anger had become permanent evidence. All from one moment in a driveway. The courtroom in Travis County, Austin, was quiet that morning. Not dramatic. Not crowded. Just a few lawyers, a clerk, and two people sitting at opposite tables who had once promised to spend their lives together. Daniel Carter sat beside his attorney, Michael Harris, reviewing the final documents. Across the room, Emily sat with her lawyer. She looked different than she had a few weeks earlier. The anger was gone. What remained was something heavier. Reality. The judge entered the courtroom and everyone stood. The hearing began. Michael Harris presented the basic facts first. The marriage timeline. The prenuptial agreement. The property records. Under Texas law, Daniel's house, car, and investment accounts were already classified as separate property because he owned them before the marriage. The prenup simply reinforced that. Emily's lawyer didn't dispute that point. Instead, he tried another angle. Your Honor, he said, while the assets may be separate property, we ask the court to consider the emotional strain and instability within the marriage that contributed to this situation. The judge nodded slightly. Go on. Emily's lawyer gestured toward Daniel. Mr. Carter installed surveillance cameras in the home and driveway without informing his wife. The courtroom shifted slightly. The lawyer continued. That kind of secrecy can create an unhealthy environment in a marriage. Michael Harris stood. Your Honor, the cameras were installed after several documented incidents involving property destruction during arguments. He placed a folder on the table. Inside were the photos Daniel had collected. Broken dishes, cracked electronics, and finally, the video of the shattered windshield. The judge watched the clip carefully. Emily lowered her eyes. When the video ended, the judge spoke calmly. Mrs. Carter, do you dispute that this footage is accurate? Emily shook her head. No, Your Honor. The judge nodded and reviewed the documents again. Texas law recognizes both separate and community property. However, the court may consider conduct during the marriage when determining the division of shared assets. Emily's lawyer sat down quietly. The judge looked up. In this case, the court recognizes Mr. Carter's premarital assets as separate property. Emily already expected that. But the judge continued. The court will divide the remaining community property accordingly. The decision wasn't dramatic. No one lost everything. But it wasn't what Emily had once imagined either. What remained between them was divided fairly. The marriage itself ended. The judge lifted the gavel. Dissolution of marriage granted. The sound echoed once in the quiet room. And just like that, it was over. Outside the courthouse, the Texas sun was bright. Emily stepped onto the sidewalk slowly. Her lawyer spoke quietly beside her. We did what we could. Emily nodded. But she wasn't thinking about the legal outcome anymore. Across the parking lot, Daniel stood beside Michael Harris. They shook hands. You handled this well, Michael said. Daniel nodded. Thank you. Michael gathered his files. If you ever need legal advice again. Daniel gave a small smile. I hope I don't. They parted ways. Daniel walked toward his car. For the first time since the incident, the windshield was completely repaired. Smooth, clear, no cracks. Across the parking lot, Emily stood alone. Their eyes met briefly. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Emily walked closer. Daniel waited. I meant what I said on the phone, she said quietly. Daniel nodded. I know. I really was sorry. I believe you. Emily looked down at the pavement. I wish I had handled that night differently. Daniel didn't argue. Instead, he said something honest. Me too. Emily looked up. You do? Daniel nodded. I wish we had talked about things earlier. For the first time, they weren't arguing. They were simply acknowledging the truth. Emily exhaled slowly. So this is it? Daniel nodded. Yes. Emily hesitated. Do you hate me? Daniel shook his head. No. That answer surprised her. Then what do you feel? Daniel thought for a moment. Then he answered honestly. Closure. Emily nodded slowly. Fair enough. She stepped back. Take care of yourself, Daniel. You too. Emily turned and walked toward the parking lot. Daniel watched her leave for a moment. Then he got into his car and drove away. Not angry. Not victorious. Just finished. Weeks later, the Carter house looked the same from the outside. But the story behind it had changed. Neighbours still remembered the night of the smashed windshield. But they talked about it differently now. Not as gossip. As a reminder. Mrs. Thompson explained it best one afternoon while speaking with a new neighbour. It started with a misunderstanding, she said, and ended with a divorce. The neighbour asked the obvious question. Was he cheating? Mrs. Thompson shook her head. No. Then she added quietly, but anger can make people believe things that aren't real. And that's the real lesson in this story. Not revenge, not punishment, but emotional control. Because one moment of unchecked anger can ripple far beyond that moment. Rachel nearly lost a career opportunity. Daniel lost a marriage. Emily lost something too. Not everything. But something important. Trust. And once trust cracks, sometimes it can't be repaired. Just like that windshield. You can replace the glass, but you can't erase the moment it shattered. Now here's the final question for you. If you were in Emily's position, would you have reacted differently that night? Or do you think most people would make the same mistake when emotions take over? Because stories like this happen more often than we think. And the difference between regret and resolution is often decided in just one moment of control.